Kipruto Arapkirwa, Deputy Party Leader ANC. Next to him, Karanja Kabagi, an advocate and political analyst, and Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu County. Good morning, gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Yeah.
Of course, the headlines are very interesting. That's why the discussion started even before the show. Chebukati Riot Act to Raila Uhuru on polls. Smarting from shock resignation of Commissioner Akombe just days to repeat elections. IBC chairman also asks compromised staff to quit. Down there, of course, what probably the biggest story yesterday, the talking point apart from Akombe's resignation, was that raid on Jimmy Wanjigi's house. That raid also features on the top strip of the Standard. Wanjigi pleads innocence, fires at police over raid. But the main splash has to do with the country at a crossroads and what's happening with the IBC in as far as preparations for the repeat presidential election. Now, the Standard has been very fair and actually broken down exactly what happened yesterday in snippets on the front page. And confusion. What next, they ask? Confusion arises over what awaits Kenyans as Akombe quits IEBC. Chebukati drops bombshell that he cannot guarantee credible election next week, and Uhuru vows he will not meet opposition, while Raila calls for demos on October 26th. That's the kind of confusion. But if you look at how they've broken it down, first, Chebukati stands Kenyans with a declaration that he cannot guarantee credible polls, the credible election on 26th, and calls for a meeting with Uhuru and Raila. 2. Raila Odinga calls for mass protests on October 26th, the day set for the repeat poll after annulment of Uhuru's declaration as winner. 3rd, President Uhuru vows October 26th poll is on, declares he will not meet NASA leaders and picks Sunday for prayers for motherland. 4. Rosalyn Akombe resigns from IBC, flees Kenya, and declares Chebukati is under siege and that she doesn't want to be part of sham election. 5. Anyang' Nyong'o, governor of Kisumu, epicenter of NASA demos, joins 3 other governors from Nyanza in declaring there will be no poll in that region. That is the state of the country. That's why we start the discussions this morning. Bona Kipruto Arapkirwa, do you still think we'll have an election on October 26th?
Well, we might have some form of election, but the problem is that the atmosphere is already pregnant with a lot of confusion. And therefore, if those who are supposed to participate in the election, or rather we call for dialogue. And the dialogue, in my opinion, is not asking for nusu mkate. I don't know why we spend a lot of time talking about food when we should be talking about serious things. And I would urge the religious community to spend a lot more time in engaging both leaders from NASA and from Jubilee with a view to getting a middle ground. I realize Chebukati seems to be a man under siege, and I would urge him also not to think of resignation. He should think of consulting as many players as possible for purposes of having a credible election. 26 may be too soon to still mend the fences as I see it from this standpoint.
Yes, Bwana Karanja Kabage, with regard to what happened yesterday, that resignation by Commissioner Rosalyn Akombe, the statement by Wafula Chebukati, the declaration that there will be protests on October 26th, the declaration by Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, that he will not meet Raila with regard to any matter before that election. Do you still believe there will be an election on October 26th?
Let's look at the background against which we are in the position we are as a country. This is a country that is governed under the Constitution and the laws. We are not a country where sentiments rule the country. We are operating under strict constitutional command, under strict legal command. And as a country, I think we need to understand why we are a country. We are a country because we have accepted to operate under the rule of law and the due process. Individual sentiments irrespective, this country cannot operate on the whims of my feelings, your feelings. if you go back to what the ruling of September 1st was, when the Supreme Court determined that elections must be held, it gave very clear direction to the IBC that as per Article 140 of the Constitution, elections must be held within 60 days. Right? There was no option even for the Supreme Court to vary that. Neither is there an option for IBC to vary that election. And neither is there an option for Raila or Uhuru to vary that. Period. This should be very clearly understood. It's neither even for the IBC commissioner or commissioners to vary that. Neither my feeling or your feelings to vary that. That should be clearly understood, so that when we are entertaining a conversation, it must be told, it must be clear to everybody that the country is not operating on optional basis. There are no options. It's a command.
Okay.
Please, and this is really important, because when I hear the commentary by people, it's as if we have a way out. We don't have a way out, because the only way out is very simple. Ousting of the Constitution. How do you oust the Constitution? You have a military.
So have an election.
You have to have elections.
Whether you're ready or not.
Okay. Please, let me just put it clear, because let us not talk about entertaining whether we are going to have elections, we are not going to have elections.
I think you made your point clear. According to the law, the election must happen.
It must be held.
Yes.
There is no option to that.
We have no way out unless we are.
Let us not try to look for a way out. Okay. What we can be doing is to engage in realizing, yes, this is the situation we are in. It's as simple as that.
Yes. Senator, two commissioners have come out to say the IEBC is not able to carry out credible elections. These elections that Karanja Kabagi says we must have, and we have no choice but have the election. But the chairman of the IEBC has come out to say, according to what is happening right now, he cannot guarantee a credible election. Commissioner Akombe, in her statement, she says we cannot have a credible election. So are we just having the election to comply with the law? Yes?
Yeah. Now, probably two things I would say. First, Akombe, after resigning, has already waived her rights to comment authoritatively on matters of the commission at this particular time. She is no longer either privy to the ongoings of the commission. As of now, she can speak.
On that issue about resignation, because there's still a bit of confusion. How does a commissioner of the IEBC resign? Is it simple by a statement? Because even the statement she sent says she signed as a commissioner of the IEBC and said, I have left my duties at the IEBC. She did not mention anywhere I have officially resigned, so she could still be a commissioner.
I think the requirement in law is that she has to give notice and communicate that notice to the head of state,
yes,
that she has resigned. And for all practical purposes, unless we want to split hairs, when she's made her decision and announced it, and she's not denied that she has resigned, it should be deemed that she's resigned. I mean, it's as simple as that. But because once she states that she has abandoned her duties, then you know what her duties are. And then you don't want to over-engage in whether she's going to be useful to the process or not. She has already declared that she will not be participating in that process, and so she's not a commissioner. That's what I was saying. I was starting my commentary on that. I think right now she can only reflect in retrospect, and then she has a right to say all the things that she's saying, but she can no longer either predict, instruct, or even tell the country how either the polls will be, because she's not been there since when she flew out, and definitely at this particular time things move pretty fast. Secondly, I think we all agree that Wafula Chebukati, the chairman, in his speech yesterday, was more vague than clear in precisely what he was communicating. I mean, he kept on teetering between left and right, sliding in the middle, and saying this and negating it in the next statement. I think in my opinion, after watching him, I don't think he came out with a precise message. But what I would want to use the opportunity to remind the chairman is that he is officially the chairman. Two, he has a duty. He has a court instruction via an order to carry out as the chairman of IEBC by conducting elections on the 26th, and that's what he should be focusing his attention and energies on. And I am cognizant of the comment that you made that he alluded to the fact that he's not able to guarantee a credible election. But you know, you ask yourself a few questions. Precisely what was he saying? You know, you can't just make that kind of blanket statement as a chairman of the IEBC without clarification. What is he saying? Because one, if and in his statement I kept hearing him referring to both sides of the divide. You know, that statement, if you ask me, when commenting on precisely the conduct of the election, I think he's very wrong, because these elections are conducted for and on behalf of the 45 million Kenyans, and whichever side of the divide, when it comes to his duty to facilitate and oversee Kenyans going to the ballot box to make a choice, then he must put in the back burner the interest of individuals or political persuasions, and know that his duty is to facilitate. Of course, it is provided for that he has to avail opportunities for stakeholders, and you can call the political players stakeholders, but they're not the only stakeholders in this process. Kenyans, that woman in the village who is waiting to go and cast her ballot is a stakeholder. And lastly, on the question of, do we have an election, or is it possible to have an election on the 26th? The answer is as simple as my colleague here has put it, and most Kenyans are saying that there will be an election on the 26th. And you see, Fred, we have to make a choice here as a country. Do we want to elevate and build up a scenario that seems to go by the creation of individuals to block a constitutional process that gives Kenyans the exit from the political standard that we have?
Gentlemen, and this is what I'm getting now. The understanding is this election will happen. It is just part of the process, because, as according to NASA, even if that process happens, it will not provide us the finality that we are looking for as a country, for us to be able to move forward, because definitely, if at all the chairman says he cannot guarantee a credible election, that is what the court demanded. So if at all anyone goes back to court and says, yes, we conducted an election but it was not credible, then it will be nullified. Is it possible to get finality in such an instance?
Well, I think we should understand that the law was not made in a void. It takes into consideration all the factors prevailing in a country. And it may not be true that nothing can be done between now and the 26th. The only problem is that we have polarized this country. You can see, emerging from the discussions even before we started this interview, there is a lot of polarization. Remember, the Grand Coalition was done, and I'm not suggesting in any way that those of us on the other side of the equation are desirous of the Grand Coalition government, but it was done under the Constitution was enlisted and made possible for it to provide for that arrangement. The IPPG in 1997 was done by members of parliament. I would have expected the Honorable Amatangi and his colleagues to think out of the box, because the way you see Raila, the way you see Uhuru, the two of them are clearly on a warpath. And this, in my opinion, is very dangerous for this country. We do not expect that, okay, you can have elections on 26th, and if half or some of the constituencies will not participate, what is the constitutional provision for that? It means that election is a nullity. And number three, the issue of institutional breakdown is very evident. What the executive is saying, what now IBC is saying, And what the Supreme Court said, if you are to read in between, and the lawyer is here, there is a lot of contradiction. Because some of the conditions that were provided for by the Supreme Court, not all of them have been met.
Okay.
And therefore will be pretending that all is well. I know the Jubilee side, they would want elections to be held. And I'm speaking here not on behalf of NASA, but I'm speaking as a Kenyan who also has an opinion. An opinion that is informed by experience and also informed by the realities that are prevailing today in Kenya.
When Karanja Kabagi is an advocate and a very senior lawyer, when you look at such a process, what Kenyans are hoping for is that you go to an election process, after that it is final. That you do not need to endlessly go around it trying to remedy issues surrounding that process. That is what Kenyans want. Kenyans everywhere, Kenyans are saying they're tired. Looking at this headlines, business hitters, political row mounts. Yes, they're looking inside pages, more and more headlines of what is happening to businesses. This is the problem that we're facing right now. People are hoping that any election process that we have will provide us with a finality, so that we are able to move on with other issues. But what you're saying now is that the law has to be followed, whether it will... it appears very rather clear that this election, yes, you say it will happen, but there will still be a problem after that. Yes? Is there a possibility, as what Kiputo Rapkirwa says, is there anything that can be done before this process happens, so that even if we go into this process, but now you say it's not even if, it is when we go into this process, we come out of it with some sense of finality?
First, I think we need to take a mental excursion back to what Mheshimiwa Senator Kilwa is saying. When we came up with a IPPG,
Yeah.
we had a constitution that was very flexible, that provided that you can actually amend it almost in the same day and get away with it. We need to have a mental transition to provide, to tell the Kenyans, wait a minute, forget that history, it's gone, over. We have a constitution, and the present constitution, how you amend the constitution to provide even for the sort of thing that he is talking about, it is articles 255, 256 and 257. Okay? Now, under chapter 16 of our constitution, which provides for the amendment of the constitution, how you amend the constitution, believe you me, and allow me to explain this to the Kenyans because they understand that, forget the history. If today you want to amend the constitution, first there has to be a publication of a bill. That bill, first reading, when you read it first time, that will be proposing amendment, you cannot touch it for a second reading before 90 days. Parliament cannot, the Senate and the National Assembly cannot discuss it. After that, the Parliament itself will have to vote for it at 2/3 each. Alright? Then you have 1 month during which the public is allowed to have a discussion on that thing. After that, it is sent to the President. After that, the President has got within 90 days to tell the IBC, look at it and tell us, does this bill require us to go for a referendum? It must be taken to the counties, and each of the counties, at least 24 counties, must pass that bill with at least 20% of the registered voters. After you have done all that, you are talking about now amending that constitution. There is no any other way.
So are you saying the current constitution...
The timeline, please, and this is what people should understand. The timeline of changing this constitution make it impossible for us to have the kind of relationship we had in the constitution of pre-2010. That is most important. And I think that it is important for both the lawyers and the legal leaders, the leaders in this country, to tell the Kenyans what we are entertaining is romance.
But Kabage, you seem to be suggesting that we are looking for, and let me make it very clear. That's not what they are.
The thing is this.
My question was, is there a possibility that this process on the 26th can actually provide Kenyans with finality? Is there a possibility even within this law that however stiff it is?
Let me tell you, the finality can be provided. What is whether the we can live with the consequences is a different matter. You understand? You have a finality, you have the elections, can we live with the consequences? That is what you should be asking. But the point of the matter is this: there is no route. Please, fellow Kenyans, there is no way you can change the current status unless you have a military takeover in the country, because the constitution is very clear. And when Kenyans understand that, then this entertainment they are talking about, that you can stop.
Clearly, if we go the constitution way, we do not have a route. What about politically? Do we have a possibility of a finality from this process? It looks rather obvious that from what Rosalind Akombe said and from what Chairman of Chebukati said, a credible election is not a guarantee. If we do not have a credible election on October 26th, anyone can go back to court. The court was very clear. Have a credible election. Yes? In strict compliance with the constitution.
Yes.
If you do not do that, then there's a problem. That means this process will go on and on and on. The issue we are looking for is finality. Are we, now that we cannot go the constitutional way, is there a political way out?
So first if you ask me, Fred, and to answer your question would be, following that court order that conduct fresh elections and abide by the constitution, when we are heading to this current poll, which constitutional provisions that the court intended to be observed that we are not able to observe in this particular election? Or better still, why do we have the scenario we are in right now, which we clearly defined here the last time, not as a constitutional crisis but as a political crisis? Because that's what we've got. And so the question we'll be asking is, why do we have a political crisis? Why is it that we are saying that we do not know, or we are not sure that we can go and conduct the elections and have the outcome credible? Reason is that we have some of the players, or part of the players, who have, one, disowned the process, exited from the process, and also threatened to mar the process. And that is what brings that doubt. But let's also take a very quick trip in history. How many times before in our country have we had similar scenarios before an election where part of the players, or one of the players, have intentionally intended or sponsored either violence, sabotage for the elections? And let's go, for example, back to 1992. You remember the first multi-party elections, and that time KANU was determined that there was not going to be elections at that particular time because they wanted to prove that multipartyism was not going to work, and they sabotaged the election in every manner possible. Remember the clashes of 1992? That's the first time when we had clashes. They sponsored violence, if you ask me, in my view, and across all over. But at the end of the day, and in spite of that particular violence, the country went to the election, of course with losses of life and so on. But the conduct of the election itself provided the country with the brake it required to move forward. And that was repeated again in 1997. And as we all know, without going into so much detail of that, it has always been used for a long time right now, other than probably in 2007, 2008, where there was that argument, was it spontaneous or pre the election, was it sponsored? But all the other times we are clear that this is what has been happening. So what NASA is doing right now is precisely what had been done by KANU in 1992, in 1997, and by one illegitimizing the process by the withdrawal. And of course, because we are politicians and we know, you can read and feel the political undercurrent. NASA has been quite engaged with some of those commissioners, for example, like Akombe, who you find is withdrawing or has withdrawn at this particular time as a commissioner, so that they can further that agenda of sabotaging the election. So the question here, if you ask me, and the answer to is, does the country want to play a game or ball with a few political leaders who are adamant and intent on sabotaging the process? Are we going to adhere to that, or will we go to the election? And if we go to the election, then the answer to your question is, will it provide us with the break that we require to free ourselves from the captivity of a few political leaders? And the answer is a simple yes. Okay. We go to the election on the 26th, we cast our ballot, and what I want to finalize for it with this, what our viewers can understand, is that all this talk you hear about the outcome of the election and so on, our law is very clear on mitigating any questions or queries you may have after an election. If you are dissatisfied with the outcome, you can go to court on any count.
That's now qualified as a Kenyan proverb, the fact that the law is very clear, despite all the confusion. According to Senator Wamatangi, yes, from our history, even disputed elections before, elections that have been in dispute, even before the process, have actually provided Kenya with that kind of finality. Does that concern you? And I'm asking you to speak for NASA now, that because NASA says there will be no election. What if we go to the election and we actually come out of it with some finality, and we are ready to move on?
Well, a number of things arise from this discussion. One, none of the elections were like this one. In '92, Kanu did not say that we don't want to go for elections. There were some skirmishes which took place in many parts of Rift Valley and other parts of this country. 97, the same thing, and 2000 it was neutralized by the fact that the two main candidates were from the same community, and therefore there was neutrality of a kind, and therefore there was no skirmishes. So it may not be true that this is almost a template of what has happened before. Number two, I just wanted to share with Wakile Kabage that we have to learn from history. And in no way have I suggested that we must amend the Constitution. In no way have I suggested that we need a grand coalition government. What I'm saying is that we have a political problem which needs a political solution. Now, when we come to the issues of technicalities, Wafula Chebukati himself said he cannot guarantee, and he's a lawyer. And this therefore means he's informed by the fact that he is in charge of the election process, and he himself as a driver says this road that you want me to travel is likely to cause danger. And therefore we should listen to him and also understand why is he saying that. By listening to him, we'll be able to know, can we avoid danger? Would we say let's go down this road regardless of the consequences? Okay. And this is the fear that I have. We are polarized in this country, and we are pretending that some of us have a right to this country more than the others. Okay.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we take a look at what Wafula Chebukati said yesterday. The nitty-gritty is, what exactly does it mean? The issues surrounding the commissioners and the secretariat of the IEBC, that division that we're now being told about, and we have quite a number of headlines looking into that as well. What does it mean for the IEBC going forward? That after the break.